Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
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 Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Yashodanandana Bhajana Randana.
Yashodanandana Bhajana Randana.
Yashodanandana Bhajana Randana.
Yashodanandana Bhajana Randana.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
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 Jai Pad Paramahamsa Purigacharya Astotra Shri Srimati Divine Grace. Shri Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Sri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Purigacharya Astotra Shri Srimati Divine Grace. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Guru. So this is practically on zero. We have to have a little bit of this. Let's break. No, you don't move. You just keep it doing what you do. You can take that fan and move it out as far as it'll go and just keep it on here without any oscillation. Let's finish my walk. Haribo. What's the name again? Prakash. How could I miss the foliage is there? Hare Krishna. Yeah, that'll do. We don't want to wake up Vijay. Takes rest at 7 o'clock. Gets up real early. All right, so remind me, before the night is out, we're going to read my little rendition of Kunkamakta Kanchanabja, which is the female parrot singing a song to Srimati Radharani in the Govinda Leela. You know it.
I think I've heard it.
So we'll do that probably around 8 o'clock. But as far as I remember, we finished. We did. Let's start again. We're going to start with the preface of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. So, page, Roman numeral 17. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 On this 24th day of August 2020 in SanDiego, on Radhashtami Eve, we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are beginning, actually, with setting the scene on Roman numeral 13. Although widely published and read by itself, the Bhagavad Gita originally appears as an episode in the Mahabharat, the epic Sanskrit history of the ancient world. The Mahabharat tells of events leading up to the present age of Kali. It was at the beginning of this age, some 50 centuries ago, that Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to his friend and devotee Arjuna. This discourse, one of the greatest philosophical and religious dialogues known to man, took place just before the onset of war, a great fratricidal conflict between the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra and on the opposing side, their cousins, the Pandavas, or sons of Pandu. Dhritarashtra and Pandu were brothers born in the Kuru dynasty, descending from King Bharat, a former ruler of the earth, from whom the name Mahabharat derives. Because Dhritarashtra, the elder brother, was born blind, the throne that otherwise would have been his was passed down to the younger brother Pandu. When Pandu died at an early age, his 5 children, Yudhishthir, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadev, came under the care of Dhritarashtra, who in effect became, for the time being, the king. Thus the sons of Dhritarashtra and those of Pandu grew up in the same royal household. Both were trained in the military arts by the expert Drona and counseled by the revered grandfather of the clan, Bhishma. Yet the sons of Dhritarashtra, especially the eldest, Duryodhana, hated and envied the Pandavas. And the blind and weak-minded Dhritarashtra wanted his own sons, not those of Pandu, to inherit the kingdom. Thus Duryodhana, with Dhritarashtra's consent, plotted to kill the young sons of Pandu, and it was only by the careful protection of their uncle Vidura and their cousin Lord Krishna that the Pandavas escaped the many attempts against their lives. Now Lord Krishna was not an ordinary man, but the Supreme Godhead himself, who had descended to earth and was playing the role of a prince in a contemporary dynasty. In this role he was also the nephew of Pandu's wife Kunti, or Pritha, the mother of the Pandavas. So both as a relative and as the eternal upholder of religion, Krishna favored the righteous sons of Pandu and protected them. Unfortunately, however, the clever Duryodhana challenged the Pandavas to a gambling match. In the course of that fateful tournament, Duryodhana and his brothers took possession of Draupadi, the chaste and devoted wife of the Pandavas, and insultingly tried to strip her naked before the entire assembly of princes and kings. Krishna's divine intervention saved her, but the gambling, which was rigged, cheated the Pandavas of their kingdom and forced them into 13 years of exile. Upon returning from exile, the Pandavas rightfully requested their kingdom from Duryodhana, who bluntly refused to yield it. Duty-bound as princes to serve in public administration, the 5 Pandavas reduced their request to a mere 5 villages. But Duryodhana arrogantly replied that he wouldn't spare them enough land in which to drive a pin. Throughout all this, the Pandavas had been consistently tolerant and forbearing, but now war seemed inevitable. Nonetheless, as the princes of the world divided, some siding with the sons of Dhritarashtra, others with the Pandavas, Krishna himself took the role of messenger for the sons of Pandu and went to the court of Dhritarashtra to plead for peace. When his pleas were refused, war was now certain. The Pandavas, men of the highest moral stature, recognized Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whereas the impious sons of Dhritarashtra did not. Yet Krishna offered to enter the war according to the desire of the antagonists. As God, he would not personally fight, but whoever so desired might avail himself of Krishna's army, and the other side would have Krishna himself as an advisor and helper. Duryodhana, the political genius, snatched at Krishna's armed forces, while the Pandavas were equally eager to have Krishna himself. In this way, Krishna became the charioteer of Arjuna, taking it upon himself to drive the fabled bowman's chariot. This brings us to the point at which the Bhagavad Gita begins, with the 2 armies arrayed, ready for combat, and Dhritarashtra anxiously inquiring of his secretary Sanjaya, what did they do? The scene is set, with only the need for a brief note regarding this translation and commentary. The general pattern translators have followed in rendering the Bhagavad Gita into English has been to brush aside the person Krishna to make room for their own concepts and philosophies. We're on page Roman numeral 14. Can you set him up, Alex? Sure. Thanks. The history of the Mahabharat is taken as quaint mythology, and Krishna becomes a poetic device for presenting the ideas of some anonymous genius, or at best he becomes a minor historical personage. But the person Krishna is both the goal and the substance of the Bhagavad Gita, so far as the Gita speaks of itself. This translation, then, and the commentary that accompanies it, propose to direct the reader to Krishna rather than away from him. The Bhagavad Gita thus becomes wholly consistent and comprehensible. Since Krishna is the speaker of the Gita, and its ultimate goal as well, Bhagavad Gita as it is presents this great scripture in its true terms. The publishers. Okay, and now Srila Prabhupada's preface, page 17, Roman. Originally, I wrote Bhagavad Gita as it is in the form in which it is presented now. When this book was first published, the original manuscript was, unfortunately, cut short to less than 400 pages, without illustrations and without explanations for most of the original verses of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. In all of my other books, Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Ishopanishad, etc., the system is that I give the original verse, its English transliteration, word-for-word Sanskrit-English equivalents, translations, and purports. This makes the book very authentic and scholarly, and makes the meaning self-evident. I was not very happy, therefore, when I had to minimize my original manuscript. But later on, when the demand for the Bhagavad Gita as it is considerably increased, I was requested by many scholars and devotees to present the book in its original form. Thus, the present attempt is to offer the original manuscript of this great book of knowledge with full parampara explanation in order to establish the Krishna consciousness movement more soundly and progressively. Our Krishna consciousness movement is genuine, historically authorized, natural, and transcendental due to its being based on Bhagavad Gita as it is. It is gradually becoming the most popular movement in the entire world, especially amongst the younger generation. It is becoming more and more interesting to the older generation also. Older gentlemen are becoming interested, so much so that the fathers and grandfathers of my disciples are encouraging us to be, by becoming life members of our great society, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. In Los Angeles, many fathers and mothers used to come to see me to express their feelings of gratitude for my leading the Krishna consciousness movement throughout the entire world. Some of them said that it was greatly fortunate for the Americans that I have started the Krishna consciousness movement in America. But actually, the original father of this movement is Lord Krishna himself, since it was started a very long time ago, but is coming down to human society by disciplic succession. If I have any credit in this connection, it does not belong to me personally, but it is due to my eternal spiritual master, His Divine Grace Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya 108 Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada. If personally I have any credit in this matter, it is only that I have tried to present Bhagavad Gita as it is, without any adulteration. Before my presentation of Bhagavad Gita as it is, almost all the English editions of the Bhagavad Gita were introduced to fulfill someone's personal ambition. But our attempt in presenting Bhagavad Gita as it is to present the mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Our business is to present the will of Krishna, not that of any mundane speculator like the politician, philosopher, or scientist. For they have very little knowledge of Krishna, despite all their other knowledge. When Krishna says, Manmana bhavamad bhakto manjaji mam namaskuru, etc., we, unlike the so-called scholars, do not say that Krishna and his inner spirit are different. Krishna is absolute, and there is no difference between Krishna's name, Krishna's form, Krishna's qualities, Krishna's pastimes, etc. This absolute position of Krishna is difficult to understand for any person who is not a devotee of Krishna in the system of parampara, or disciplic succession. Generally, the so-called scholars, politicians, philosophers, and swamis, without perfect knowledge of Krishna, try to banish or kill Krishna when writing commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. Such unauthorized commentary upon the Bhagavad Gita is known as Mayavad Bhashya. And Lord Chaitanya has warned us about these unauthorized men. Lord Chaitanya clearly says that anyone who tries to understand the Bhagavad Gita from the Mayavadi point of view will commit a great blunder. The result of such a blunder will be that the misguided student of the Bhagavad Gita will certainly be bewildered on the path of spiritual guidance and will not be able to go back to home, back to Godhead. Our only purpose is to present this Bhagavad Gita as it is in order to guide the conditioned student to the same purpose for which Krishna descends to this planet once in a day of Brahma, or every 8,600,000,000 years. This purpose is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, and we have to accept it as it is. Otherwise, there's no point in trying to understand the Bhagavad Gita and its speaker, Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna first spoke the Bhagavad Gita to the sun god some hundreds of millions of years ago. We have to accept this fact and thus understand the historical significance of the Bhagavad Gita without misinterpretation, on the authority of Krishna. To interpret the Bhagavad Gita without any reference to the will of Krishna is the greatest offense. In order to save oneself from this offense, one has to understand the Lord as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as he was directly understood by Arjuna, Lord Krishna's first disciple. Such understanding of the Bhagavad Gita is really profitable and authorized for the welfare of human society in fulfilling the mission of life. The Krishna consciousness movement is essential in human society, for it offers the highest perfection of life. How this is so is explained fully in the Bhagavad Gita. Unfortunately, mundane wranglers have taken advantage of the Bhagavad Gita to push forward their demonic propensities and mislead people regarding right understanding of the simple principles of life. Everyone should know how God or Krishna is great, and everyone should know the factual position of the living entities. Everyone should know that a living entity is eternally a servant, and that unless one serves Krishna, one has to serve illusion in different varieties of the three modes of material nature, and thus wander perpetually within the cycle of birth and death. Even the so-called liberated Mayavadi speculator has to undergo this process. This knowledge constitutes a great science, and each and every living being has to hear it for his own interest. People in general, especially in this age of Kali, are enamored by the external energy of Krishna, and they wrongly think that by advancement of material comforts, every man will be happy. They have no knowledge that the material or external nature is very strong, for everyone is strongly bound by the stringent laws of material nature. A living entity is happily the part and parcel of the Lord, and thus his natural function is to render immediate service to the Lord. By the spell of illusion, one tries to be happy by serving his personal sense gratification in different forms, which will never make him happy. Instead of satisfying his own personal material senses, he has to satisfy the senses of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of life. The Lord wants this, and he demands it. One has to understand the central point of the Bhagavad Gita. Our Krishna consciousness movement is teaching the whole world this central point, and because we are not polluting the theme of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, anyone seriously interested in deriving benefit by studying the Bhagavad Gita must take help from the Krishna consciousness movement for practical understanding of the Bhagavad Gita under the direct guidance of the Lord. We hope, therefore, that people will derive the greatest benefit by studying Bhagavad Gita as it is, as we have presented it here. And if even one man becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, we shall consider our attempt a success. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, 12 May 1971 in Sydney, Australia. And now we begin with the invocation in the introduction on page number 1. So those who know these prayers can chant along. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Supadantikam. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? All right, now we're going to chant this according to the strict here. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vikantam Sajivam Sarvaitam Savadutam Padajana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangscha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master and unto the feet of all Vaishnavas. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami, along with his elder brother, Sanatan Goswami, as well as Raghunath Das and Raghunath Bhatta, Gopal Bhatta, and Srila Jiva Goswami. I offer my respectful obeisances to Lord Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, along with Advaita Acharya, Gadadhar, Srivas, and other associates. I offer my respectful obeisances to Srimati Radharani and Sri Krishna, along with their associates, Sri Lalita and Vishakha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopeshi Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Oh my dear Krishna, you are the friend of the distressed and the source of creation. You are the master of the gopis and lover of Radharani. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye. I offer my respects to Srimati Radharani, whose bodily complexion is like molten gold and who is the queen of Vrindavan. You are the daughter of King Vrishabhanu and you are very dear to Lord Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, just like desire trees, and they are full of compassion for the fallen souls. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Harigo Bhakta Vrinda. I offer my obeisances to Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas and all others in the line of devotion. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. All right, so we're not going to read this whole introduction without stopping, but we'll stop after a few paragraphs. The Bhagavad Gita is also known as Gita Upanishad. It is the essence of Vedic knowledge and one of the most important Upanishads in Vedic literature. Of course, there are many commentaries in English on the Bhagavad Gita, and one may question the necessity for another one. This present edition can be explained in the following way. Recently, an American lady asked me to recommend an English translation of the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, in America, there are so many editions of the Bhagavad Gita available in English. But as far as I have seen, not only in America, but also in India, none of them can be strictly said to be authoritative because, in almost every one of them, the commentator has expressed his own opinions without touching the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita, as it is. The spirit of the Bhagavad Gita is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita itself. It is just like this. If we want to take a particular medicine, then we have to follow the directions written on the label. We cannot take the medicine according to our own whim or the direction of a friend. It must be taken according to the directions on the label or the directions given by a physician. Similarly, the Bhagavad Gita should be taken or accepted as it is, directed by the speaker himself. The speaker of the Bhagavad Gita is Lord Shri Krishna. He is mentioned on every page of the Bhagavad Gita as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. Of course, the word Bhagavan sometimes refers to any powerful person or any powerful demigod, and certainly here Bhagavan designates Lord Shri Krishna as a great personality. But at the same time, we should know that Lord Shri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as is confirmed by all great acharyas, spiritual masters, like Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarka Swami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and many other authorities of Vedic knowledge in India. The Lord himself establishes himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the Bhagavad Gita, and he is accepted as such in the Brahma Samhita and all the Puranas, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Bhagavad Purana, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. Therefore, we should take Bhagavad Gita as it is directed by the Personality of Godhead himself. In the 4th chapter of the Gita, 4.1-3, the Lord says, Iman vivastate yogam proktavanahamavyam vivasvamanave praha munariksvakave bravit evam parampara praptam himam raja shiyogadahu sakalene hamahata yogo nashtak parantapa sahevaya mayatete yoga prokta puratanam pakdosime sakacheti rasyam yeta uttamam. Here the Lord informs Arjuna that the system of yoga The Bhagavad Gita was first spoken to the sun god, and the sun god has explained it to Manu, and Manu explained it to Ikshvaku, and in that way, by disciplic succession, one speaker after another, this yoga system has been coming down. But in the course of time, it has become lost. Consequently, the Lord has to speak it again, this time to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. All right, I'll read one more paragraph. He tells Arjuna that he, Krishna, is relating this supreme secret to him because Arjuna is his devotee and his friend. The purport of this is that the Bhagavad Gita is a treatise which is especially meant for the devotee of the Lord. There are three classes of transcendentalists, namely the jnani, the yogi, and the bhakta, or the impersonalist, the meditator, and the devotee. Here the Lord clearly tells Arjuna that he is making him the first receiver of a new parampara with disciplic succession, because the old succession was broken. It was the Lord's wish, therefore, to establish another parampara in the same line of thought that was coming down from the sun god to others. And it was Krishna's wish that his teaching be distributed anew by Arjuna. Krishna wanted Arjuna to become the authority in understanding the Bhagavad Gita. So we see that the Bhagavad Gita is instructed to Arjuna especially because Arjuna was a devotee of the Lord, a direct student of Krishna, and his intimate friend. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita is best understood by a person who has qualities similar to Arjuna's. That is to say, he must be a devotee in a direct relationship with the Lord. As soon as one becomes a devotee of the Lord, he also has a direct relationship with the Lord. That is a very elaborate subject matter, but briefly it can be stated that a devotee is in a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in one of 5 different ways. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unminitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Shri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, we've read the setting of the scene, the preface, and now we're beginning the introduction. And in all of these introductory essays, what do you call them, there's one central theme here, and that is Prabhupada is establishing the authority of the Bhagavad Gita. And not only the Bhagavad Gita, but this particular Bhagavad Gita. Again and again in the preface he's talking about how the Bhagavad Gita, unless it's received from the right source, from a person, is bound to be misinterpreted and distorted. And there's so many examples of that. And the result is that the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is lost. The Bhagavad Gita has a very significant purpose, and that is to provide a summary, a very condensed version of the essence of all of the Vedic knowledge, the Upanishadic knowledge. That's what we call the Gita Upanishad. And because, as Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, one of his main missions in coming to this world is to reestablish Dharma, to eradicate adharma, and eradicate the adharmis, the miscreants who have taken over the earth. So, therefore, Krishna periodically comes, as Prabhupada says, once every 8,600,000,000 years or so, once in a day of Brahma, 24-hour period. But more importantly, for us, he leaves his emissaries and his book in the words. And when you take that 8,600,000,000 years, it's just yesterday. 5,000 is nothing. It's a snap of the finger. So we're practically contemporaries. What to speak of Lord Chaitanya, who was here not just yesterday, but a minute ago, comparatively. So we're very fortunate. We're very fortunate to have the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and undistorted, given as it is, and presented in such a way that we can understand it. And Srila Prabhupada, faithfully following in this line, he quotes here from the section in the 4th chapter where Krishna is giving the pedigree or the history of the Gita in human society. Well, he spoke it. I spoke this eternal knowledge to the sun god millions and millions of years ago. And he in turn spoke it to Vaivasvata Manu, who is the present Manu, who then spoke it to Ikshvaku, and came down into human society in that way. But even so the saintly kings understood in this way. Why is it so important for the why saintly kings? Raja Rishi, they're not just kings, but they're also scholars and sages and saints. Because they guide whole society. Society can be auspiciously ruled when the ruler is a saintly king, an actual devotee. And we have several examples right in the Bhagavatam. King Parikat, Yudhishthira, Prithu, we're reading about recently. Then everything, society, people can be prosperous, peaceful, and most importantly, they can make progress on the path back to Godhead. So, at the beginning of Kali Yuga, there was an upsurge of the demons. They had become more prominent and dominant in the human society. We had Kamsa, Jarasa, we know from the 10th canto, and many others. So Krishna advented himself, and for many reasons. The reasons explained here in the Bhagavad Gita, but there's also another reason that's given in the 10th canto. It says, Anugrahaya bhaktana manasam deyam ashritaha bhajate tadvashi krita sashudva tatparo bhavet. That out of compassion for my devotees, I come periodically and I reenact the Leela that I'm doing in the spiritual world. He brings his whole replica of his original abode, Vrindavan, and he engages in the sweetest and most attractive pastimes, so that they're recorded and that their devotees have renewed remembrance of subject matter for hearing and chanting. And the Bhagavatam tells of that and gives us a chance to meditate and to hear about and become absorbed in the all-attractive pastimes of the Lord. So that's also to protect his devotees and help his devotees. So that's, it's come down, but due to the demonic forces, it's become distorted or lost. Yoga nashta parantapa. It's become lost. So, therefore, I'm speaking it to you again today, Arjun. And it's come down through the Mahabharat. Vyasadeva, of course, wrote it. And Srila Prabhupada, broke it out, of the Sanskrit, and he wrote and he explains how it was a struggle to get that early, this book, Unabridged Gita, written. It's actually miraculous, an instance of Krishna's direct intervention, obviously, how this first book, got printed. Just visualize. Prabhupada comes to America penniless. He struggles for months and months and months, barely surviving, selling a few books and living at the cost, Dr. Mishra helped him out, And then he somehow was able to get downtown New York, living on the Bowery, a very difficult situation, with drunks everywhere. But, he was still attracted. He was beating that bongo drum and chanting Hare Krishna and attracting some people on the basis of that. And he was speaking on the Bhagavad Gita. There were no written books, but he was speaking. And he had those 3 books of the Bhagavad Gita. So eventually he gets, the place in 26 2nd Avenue, and that's a much better situation. He's really in the East Village now, and it's the height of the hippie era, and there's various early pioneers who come and help. So, but he's really eager to get some books printed, he's got the BTG going out, So he wrote the Bhagavad Gita, as he says, in its form it's printed now. I have the replicas of those already. He types out individually before he had the dictaphone. The first 5.5 chapters, he's typing, getting 2 fingers. He brought that, I think, the same typewriter with him. That was one of the things he brought. So, it's a long haul, and who's going to edit it? Who's going to produce it? He's just piling up manuscript pages. No money, hardly any money. Then finally, one of his disciples sees the dictaphone in the shop. He said, "Well, Swamiji could use this." So he buys it, and miracle after miracle, Prabhupada knows exactly how to use it. Where did he a dictaphone in Vrindavan, India? So he knows how to use it. He starts using it. But who's going to type it up? None of the guys could type. So in walks. You can't even call him Bhakta Neo because he wasn't a Bhakta. He was on. It was the summertime, and he's at one of the universities in New York, and he wanted to get some credit for getting involved in one of the new religions, So he picked Hare Krishna. So he walks in, and hi Neil, How you doing? You know how to type? Oh, yeah, I'm a pretty good typist. Here, I got to show you. So he becomes Prabhupada's transcriber. And you can imagine, Prabhupada is quoting Sanskrit verses and everything. It just leaves a blank on the page, Prabhupada's accent, it usually takes a while to be able to hear. He's typing away. So this is the manuscript that they had to edit, a lot of. So finally they got the edited manuscript, but who's going to print it? They have no money and they certainly have no press, So, but Prabhupada has become a little bit famous because Allen Ginsberg, who was a famous beat poet, he's living right there. He's been to India, he chants Hare Krishna. He gave the devotees, he gave Prabhupada a harmonium. And so, that added some cachet of Allen Ginsberg, So there was various articles. There was an article in the New York Times, and mostly going out. They're going out to the park there, what's it called? By NYU. What is it?
Tompkins Square?
No, the first one. Washington Square. Washington Square. That was actually the first kirtan. But the cops patrolled that because that's in the nicer section, So as soon as they sat down on the grass, they said, "Can't you see the sign? Who's in charge here?" So Prabhupada sits down on the pavement, So it was much more accommodating on the east side than Tompkins Square Park. Cops, who cares? It's at the east side. I lived there, and not 2 blocks from there, in '68, a few years later. Anyway, so he's gathering these true followers, but there's not much money. So suddenly Brahmananda, who was one of the pioneers there, temple president, he got a letter from somebody from the Macmillan Company, interested in the Bhagavad Gita. And he said, "Well, what should I do with it, Prabhupada?" Swamiji. I think they still call him Swamiji. He said, "We should go there and present it and see if they want to print my Gita." Just to walk in. And say, this is a worldwide, huge company, Macmillan, They're also in England. But everything happened, they all have an office in New York. So he goes uptown, and I don't think he had anything with him. I don't think he had a manuscript. He asked Prabhupada, "Should I take the books you already printed? Those Delhi Bhagavatams?" He says, No, you just go up and tell them we have the Bhagavad Gita. So, okay. So they, Prabhupada ordered to do it, I'll do it. So he goes up and he finally finds the man who sent him the request for the Bhagavad Gita. And it turns out he's just some clerk, he's not like an editor or one of the main officers, So he sits and he's chatting with him. And then in walks one of the main guys. And so he sees, we're dressed as a devotee, so he's, and they start to converse, and Brahmana says, we have a Bhagavad Gita to print. "Oh, really? We're looking for a Bhagavad Gita. We printed the Tibetan Book of the Dead, we printed this, we printed that. Now we need a Bhagavad Gita." He said, "Well, we got a Bhagavad Gita." He says, "Okay." It's like a miracle. So Brahmananda's like, "Wow, Prabhupada did something to come up here." Totally miraculous. But they weren't ready to commit to this Bhagavad Gita, 1,000-page book, come on. So it had to be abridged. So Prabhupada wasn't happy with that, as he expressed in the preface. But it's something, I have the copy. Have you ever seen the abridged? It's the blue version. No Sanskrit, no diacritics, no transliteration. Just translation, and every so often to be a purport, because it had to come down to like 250 pages. This is 900 pages. So okay, you got it. So, but what it did have, but this book doesn't have, there were certain leading lights. Thomas Merton, Thomas Merton. He wrote an introduction to it. Part of it. Denise Levertov, another big name. I think Allen Ginsberg also wrote. So it had all these big names. So they were selling those books, and Prabhupada was giving classes on it also. Anyway, so that's how it started. And after the books were selling, Macmillan said, "Okay, let's have the main one," And that's how it's. But that was like a whole editing thing, and all the Sanskrit. There were so many mistakes. I won't get into the history of it. But that was the book, 72, and on. And it wasn't our book. It's not like we could revise it. It was very expensive to change. So it was just as it is. And then it was revised in 83, the whole thing, what we have today. But it was Krishna's direct intervention how this book came to be in its present, form. So the whole point here is that Prabhupada is establishing this Bhagavad Gita as unique amongst Bhagavad Gitas. because it is giving it the message as it is, and it's not turning away. It's explained in the setting the scene from Krishna, setting him in. And one of Prabhupada's favorite targets was Dr. Radha Krishna, naming something to you, right? He had been the president of India, and he was a scholar, and he wrote a Bhagavad Gita. Now, when Prabhupada was in India, one of the things he did, he tried to work with the Gaudiya God Brothers, and at one point he was actually asked to oversee a temple while the head of the temple, one of his God brothers, was traveling. So he was there, and there was a whole brahmachari ashram, and he was, brahmachari, running the brahmachari. And they would go out and preach. So one of them came back and said, "Oh, I was in a lecture with Dr. Radha Krishna, and he said in 934. 934 is the key verse. Krishna says, the most confidential of all knowledge. He repeats it practically word by word in 1865 later on. Guryatamam. This is the essence of the whole thing right here. Just think of me, become my devotee, worship me and bow down to me, and certainly link to me in yoga, you'll come to me." And then later in 18th chapter it says, "Because you're my very, very dear friend, I promise you'll come to me." So what does Dr. Radha Krishna say there in the purport? It's not to Krishna the person we have to surrender, but it's to the unborn, ever-existing infinite within Krishna. Oh boy, that was like fighting words. So in his book, in his Bengali essays that he was publishing to one of his God Brothers magazines, he wrote extensively about this, referring to the page numbers of the books. I have that book on my shelf. I bought it on Amazon. He goes into detail combating this misconception that there's something within Krishna that's not Krishna. That's the big difference between Krishna and us. He's spirit through and through. We're a little bit of spirit and a whole bunch of matter, right? Anyway, so that he probably refers to that in this preface too, and he also certainly refers to it in the purport to 934. So there's all of these different aspects of this book coming together, and as we go on with this introduction, we will, Prabhupada quotes extensively at the end of the introduction from the Gita Mahatmya, glorification of the Gita, and but because of the typist and the editors, those verses were all removed. They didn't know what they were. They're not Gita verses, so they were restored later. A lot of things were restored that needed to be restored. All right, we'll read a little bit more, and then I'm going to read my. Did I say I'm going to read my poem of from the Govinda Lilamrita, the Sari singing? Kumka Makta Kanchanabhya. Have you heard that? Bhakti True song. They made a beautiful recording of that. They used to play it, Harry, in the Tulsi House many years ago. All right, so we'll read a little bit more. Different relationships. Prabhupada says, the very elaborate subject matter of the different rasas, which he retreats later, in next devotion. But he makes a summary here. It can be stated that a devotee is in a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in one of 5 different ways. One may be a devotee in a passive state, Shanta Ras. One may be a devotee in an active state, Dasya Ras. One may be a devotee as a friend, Sakya Ras. One may be a devotee as a parent, Vatsalya Ras. And one may be a devotee as a conjugal lover, Madhurya Ras. Arjuna was in a relationship with the Lord as a friend. Of course, there is a gulf of distance between this friendship and the friendship found in the material world. This is transcendental friendship, which cannot be had by everyone. Of course, everyone has a particular relationship with the Lord, and that relationship is evoked by the perfection of devotional service. But in the present status of our life, not only have we forgotten the Supreme Lord, but we have forgotten our eternal relationship with the Lord. Every living being, out of the many, many billions and trillions of living beings, has a particular relationship with the Lord eternally. This is called Swarup. By the process of devotional service, one can revive that Swarup, and that stage is called Swarup Siddhi, perfection of one's constitutional position. So Arjuna was a devotee, and he was in touch with the Supreme Lord in friendship. How Arjuna accepted this Bhagavad Gita should be noted. His manner of acceptance is given in the 10th chapter, 10, 12 to 14. So this is after the essential 4 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, beginning with Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo. Then Arjuna, he responds and says, yes, I agree. Param, some of you know these verses, or you can read along. Prakash, you got it? I'll say, you say, all of us. Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram Paramam Bhavan, Purusham Shasvatam Divyam, Adidevam Ajam Vibhum, Ahus Tvam Shayak Sarve, Devashir Naradastatha, Asato Devalo Vyasa, Swayam Chaiva Bravishime, Savametad Bhatam Manye, Yanman Vadasi Keshava, Nahite Bhagavan Vyaktim, Vidudevana Dhanavaha. Arjuna said to Krishna, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, the greatest. All the great sages such as Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyas confirm this truth about you, and now you yourself are declaring it to me. O Krishna, I totally accept as truth all that you have told me. Neither the demigods nor the demons, O Lord, can understand your personality. And we will resume there on Wednesday. Tomorrow we have a special program. Okay, let me get this. All right. So now, I may not get a chance to read this tomorrow or the next day, at least in public. So I'm going to read it now. Okay. So I'll give you just the first verse of Sanskrit, and then we'll just read the English. So this is from the Govinda Lilamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, the same author of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And this is spoken by a female parrot. There's also a male parrot who has 8 verses about Krishna. But this is, since it's Radharani's appearance day coming up, I thought I'd read this. Kunkamakta kanchanam jagava hari gorabha pitanachitam jaganda kirti nindi sorabha ballavesha suna sava vanchitartha sadhika maya matma parapadma dasa dasturarika. That's a very wonderful little lilting meter, and it all rhymes. It rhymes in couplets. Her gold complexion steals the pride of golden lotus tinged with red. Her fragrance mocks the scent of lotus bloom with saffron powder spread. Her skill in satisfying Sri Hari is perfect and complete. May Radhika bestow on me the service of her lotus feet. Her wondrous silken garment shame the splendor rubies can display. She is the blooming garden where the bee of Krishna loves to play. She worships Surya every day so she and Madhava can meet. May Radhika bestow on me the service of her lotus feet. Eclipsed by Radha's tenderness, the fame of budding blossoms dims. The moon, the lotus sandal paste, and camphor serve her cooling limbs. When Krishna burns with love's desires, her soothing touch dispels the heat. May Radhika bestow on me the service of her lotus feet. Though youthful goddesses, adored by all, adore the goddess Shri, she lacks Shri Radha's beauty, youth, and every other quality. So when it comes to lover sports, with Radha no one can compete. May Radhika bestow on me the service of her lotus feet. Within the rasa dance, her joking and her singing are the best. She shines with countless traits divine, like love and gorgeous form and dress. Among the famous gopis of Vrindavan, she's supremely sweet. May Radhika bestow on me the service of her lotus feet. Eternal pastimes, beauty, youth, and love for Krishna make her rich. The loving gopis tremble just to see her love at highest pitch. Her meditation on Shri Krishna's form and pastimes is complete. May Radhika bestow on me the service of her lotus feet. Perspiring, trembling, hairs on end, and crying, faltering of the voice, impatience, joy, and guile, these signs of rapture make her friends rejoice. For Krishna's eyes these many gem-like ecstasies provide a treat. May Radhika bestow on me the service of her lotus feet. Apart from Krishna for a moment, Radha feels anxiety and restlessness and other moods, the highest kind of ecstasy. But when she meets him with some effort, all her sufferings retreat. May Radhika bestow on me the service of her lotus feet. Exalted goddesses like Parvati can hardly ever see Shri Krishna's lover Radhika, but if a humble devotee recites these verses, then Shri Radha, who enjoys with Shri Hari, will pour the nectar of her service down on him eternally. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Now, we have time for one more. The only other verse I have that describes Radharani is about the Hare Krishna mantra. Because when we chant Hare Krishna, we're addressing Radharani. Hara, and the vocative is Hare, so we know that. So this is a verse that some of you have heard before. Maybe you've heard it a long time ago. Some of you may not have heard it. And that is by Raghunath Das Goswami. He says, Radheti nama navasundadasila mugdham Krishneti nama mararabhadagara dugdham Savakshanam surabiragahimena ramyam Kritvata daiva pibame rasane chudarte. An excellent fresh nectar drink with endless subtle tastes, such is the name of Radha, by whom all three worlds are graced. Condensed milk that is wonderfully delicious, thick and sweet, such is the name of Krishna, in whom all attractions meet. Now mix these drinks, O thirsty tongue, and add the cooling, fragrant spice of love, a prize the wise will try to buy at any price. And then at every moment, drink this beverage most fine, and make my heart supremely blissful, peaceful, and divine. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Well, we have time for one more. I don't have another Radha poem. But, oh yes I do. This is a prayer I offer every morning when we greet the deities and come before Radha Giridhari. Pashupala Bedinyanandana Avanametang Maharati Heyubam Babatu Panayo Bave Bave Bavatore Vapadam Bujeshame. O Radha Krishna, children of the best of cowherd men, this single boon I beg from you again and yet again. In all the countless births my endless sins will make me meet. Let all my love flow toward your luscious, lustrous lotus feet. Hari Hari Bol. One more. Madoram madoram bapadasya vibho madoram madoram vadanam madoram madogandi madusmita metadaho madoram 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 madoram. You know this one? No? I can send you all my poetry. It's in the poetry. It's in the poetry volume. Sweet, sweet is my dear Lord's form. Sweet is still his face so fair, but his honey-scented, gentle smile is sweet beyond compare. Now I kind of expanded on that. There's no Sanskrit for this. The sweetness of Sri Krishna's form beguiles. Still sweeter is his face like autumn moon. But sweeter than the sweetest is his smile, whose luscious beauty makes the gopi swoon. Govinda's beauty captivates the doves, the swans, the deer, the cows, and every tree. Indeed, in Braja, every creature loves Sri Krishna and is drowned in ecstasy. That all-enchanting land is paradise, our home where we may dwell eternally. Most welcome there are those who pay the price to learn to love Sri Krishna perfectly. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. And now I think we're ready to adjourn and prepare for the Artik. Thank you for your attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.